Hello. So I want to start now. I want to introduce Mr. Francis Bocher, who is now in Parameta Lodge in Mexico, but we are communicating and have his presentation on remote. But I want to introduce him as the best and the most well-known fly fisherman in the world. He is from South Africa, but now he is the citizen of the globe. And we met him in 2018 in Argentina, in the Corrientes flood of a river, fishing Dorado, and he teaches us how to fish Dorado. Then immediately we met in September. He came to Japan to check with our fish Ayu and Amago in a small river in Akita and many places in Japan. So he knows Japan very much. Then he has been to many places in the world. He guided us in the atoll of Seychelles, in Huacua or in Cosmoredo to try fishing of GT, but we were good with his guidance. He knows many rivers, lakes, and ocean, sea in the world. He loves the nature. He wants to protect the nature. And we are very proud to have his presentation about fly fishing. And fly fishing is usually catch and release, and also we care much about the nature. So we would like to have his presentation of his amazing experience of fly fishing, as well as his love about nature. So thank you very much for your listening, and please start, Mr. Bocher, about your presentation. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Soraya. Thank you for having me and for the wonderful introduction. I am honored to be here and to be speaking about something that is very close to my heart, a passion for fly fishing that I have also shared with yourselves. I will begin to speak about my early days and how I began fly fishing and how my career developed and how it basically opened me up to the world. And eventually how it also started to make me realize that we have a certain responsibility and a focus on conservation and community that sprouted from there. But first, let's begin at the beginning. I am a professional fly fisherman, and it was very difficult to imagine that I would ever be one. I never thought it. But when you have a look at my life and how my life developed, it seemed like it was almost inevitable. As a young boy, my father taught me how to fish. And that must be one of the greatest gifts that he has ever given me. It was at once something that I could share, a pastime that I could share with loved ones. But what it also was it was something that really captured my attention. And in a world where I struggled sometimes to always focus or concentrate at school, it was something that really captured my imagination and made me focus. So when I eventually started fly fishing I was about 17 years old. And a good friend of mine had introduced me to fly fishing in South Africa. And from there, it just grabbed me. There was this new way or this new method in which I could, explore and all of the little fisheries around South Africa and so forth. And that soon progressed to me actually looking a little bit further and saying, well, further up in Africa, we have the Zambezi River and we have these tremendous fish called tigerfish that are an obvious favorite for many people to catch. And so I ventured there to go fly fish there. And that's when I also started realizing that, there were many other people that wanted to do this sort of thing. And it led me to believe that perhaps I could have a look at something like a guiding career. And I did end up starting a small company, and I ended up fishing on the Zambezi River and pioneered a few other small species of fish. But my turning point came, when I was invited to go and guide in the famous atoll of Cosmolido in the Seychelles. Now, Mr. Soraya, as you know, and you have been there with me, this is one of the wildest places in the world. And it is known so well for its GT, giant trevally fishing. I know that the Japanese fishing culture around the giant trevally is tremendous. And what really amazed me about this place was just how remote it was and just how few people had ever been there. In fact, there were no people there. We had to go there in liveaboard boats and so forth. And although it was fairly fraught with danger, what I saw there and the richness of nature was just incredible. That's where I guided the first ever GT, the one on your screen right now. And, from there, it just became something that I just had a passion for. And so Seychelles really the Cosmolido really opened it up for me. I started meeting people from all around the world. And these people started telling me about other places where they had fished that were so amazing and so forth. And so it eventually led to me really expanding my horizon and starting to explore the rest of the world in fly fishing. And that led me to some of the most tremendous places. It led me to the Amazon jungle. It led me to the Bolivian jungle. It led me into Russia, into the Arctic Circle in Russia. It led me into Alaska, and all around Africa. In fact, to date, I've now been fishing and guiding in 52 countries around the world. So ask me which one's next. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But so, yeah, and I started seeing all of these amazing things. And, I was always fascinated by nature, as you mentioned, and, the wildlife and the different cultures was just tremendous. And, of course, working with people that, were like-minded. Anybody that comes and fly fishes generally also have a sense or a love of nature, And I believe that it was Immanuel Kant who said that an appreciation for natural beauty is a mark of the moral man. And so I do believe that many of the people that I met through fly fishing were all sort of like-minded. They also love nature. They also had a sort of a need to protect. And one of the things in the picture that you can see on your screen right now, which is a photograph of a friend of mine that caught a beautiful sailfish on one of my many trips to the Seychelles, was that I started taking up photography as well. So it became very important for me to really capture these moments, because I knew that the places that I was seeing around the world were so special and that very few people would ever really see them. And so that's where I also felt like photography became a very important part. And that was in order to show and exhibit to people, basically the splendor and the natural beauty of these places, where I'd went. And, I did it for, by this time I'd been fly fishing for about 10 years. And, I had built up a wonderful career, and I had built up a wonderful client database of people that always wanted to go fishing with me and always said to me, what's next and what's next. And there was always this something. There was always a fish that had me captivated. There was something that sort of I lost sleep about, and that was a fish in the Central Africa in the Congo Basin, and that fish is called a Goliath tigerfish. And a lot of my exploration, around Africa and around the Zambezi River and so forth, and in the Seychelles, had taught me all of the different skills to have a look at this fish and to say, well, can I catch it? And, many people said it's impossible, you will never be able to do something like that. And I think that's when I realized, well, this is something that I definitely have to go and try. And so from all of these places that I'd fished around the world, and I'd learned so much of the exploration around them, I gathered all of my experience and I gathered all of my knowledge, and we set off to try and catch this Goliath tigerfish, right? And they'd never ever been caught on fly before, and so that took me all the way into the DRC and into the Congo. And there for instance, we proved that it could be done. We proved that you could catch a Goliath tigerfish on fly, the one on your screen right now. But, I wasn't satisfied. We had sort of seen that we could do it, but we were in a place where there were lots of people and there'd be lots of destruction. And so that had taken place. And I wished to find the most remote place in the world, a place where basically there were no people, there was nothing, there were only these fish in a river. And many people said to me, well, not only is it impossible to catch these fish, but the place you're looking for doesn't exist. And lo and behold, in 2014, I get a phone call from a friend and he says to me, listen, I think I've got something that you need to check out. And after venturing into the Central African Republic amidst the civil war, which everybody thought I was very brave or very stupid to go and do, I found a place that was exactly what I was looking for. And there's a small video that we can play for you right now, about 2 minutes, to show you what I found. All right. So that was the video, and I hope everybody enjoyed that. Yes, we'd found this amazing place. And what happened for me during this time of working with conservation agencies so much, this is when it occurred to me that there is actually a greater responsibility out there than to just catch the fish. I think that, nature is being impacted by large-scale industrialization and by perhaps even overpopulation and overutilization of resources. And, I agree the fact that, we do in fly fishing, we do things like catch and release and so forth. But I do believe that we play an impact. And we derive a lot of joy and pleasure out of nature and out of basically, catching fish. But, I believe that we should actually be asking ourselves, but what do the fish need? Because without the fish there, we wouldn't derive that amount of joy and so forth. And we do play an impact on them. And I think it's important for us to know what is our impact. And ever since, the discovery of the Goliath tigerfish in Central Africa and working so much with conservation agencies, I realized how important science and research around things like, fish are. And that's where I stumbled upon a few projects that I am currently involved with right now. The one is the tagging and research program in Palmyra Atoll, which is an atoll in the Central Pacific. And there, a very smart scientist has put forward a proposal in order for fly fishermen, such as myself, to go and to take part in research, in tagging research of GTs, bluefin trevally, and 2 triggerfish species. And the aim of the idea of the research is in order to establish, within a fishery, an atoll fishery in the middle of the ocean, what are the impacts of fly fishermen and of recreational fishermen, practicing a catch and release approach fishery. And the way that they would determine this is they would allow a very small amount of people each year to come and join 4 research assistants, 4 fishermen, 4 research assistants, and capture fish and tag them with pit tags. And these tags can be scanned with a little handheld device. And in the last 15 years, they've gained unbelievable information about the triggerfish and the GTs and the bluefin on this Palmyra atoll. And they've mapped it out, and they've basically shown how, through correct practice and through very good fishery management, you could keep a resource pristine, and you can ensure that the fish there survive once you've released them, and that they continue their normal or natural cycle. And what it showed was that many of the fish that we fish for are very territorial, and that you often recapture them in exactly the same place, sometimes as short as 35 hours after capture, and sometimes for as long as 2,000 days after capture. And the growth rates and so on measured and so forth. But I think that it's very important for us, for fishermen all around the world, to understand what is our impact, and to either join a research program or to either look at some research that's available to a similar fishery and see how they can be less impactful and see how that they can promote, their fisheries around the world to thrive. So I think that has become central now to what I do and what I love in the fly fishing industry. And that is basically to make people aware of conservation and to make people aware of the fact that they should lower their impact rather than make it more. And I think in many of the cases when we go fishing, we feel like a very successful day of fishing is if we catch a lot of fish. So let's say 20 fish. But I can tell you is that if you go and catch 20 fish, it was a very unsuccessful day for the fish, because they were all caught by you and they've all been impacted by you. And so I think that we've reached a stage where we as fishermen also need to realize that we only need to take so much to derive joy from it. And sometimes we can wait, or we can leave it for the next day, or we can leave it for somebody else, and therefore ensuring that our fisheries stay pristine. And so that is something that's very central to me and my passion right now of fly fishing around the world. I think that what's also happened is, it's also made me have a look at communities and people around us. Where we are in Mexico right now, it's a perfect example where the town that we live in is only about 400 people, and it's on an island peninsula in a biosphere reserve in Siam Khan. And there is very little income based off anything other than ecotourism. Right? Things like ecotourism and specifically fly fishing. I mean, basically, all of the best jobs in town, and almost the reason why town exists, is because of fly fishing and because of international people that want to come and fly fish. And Quite often, I think communities don't really realize how important their environment and how important their community is, to support something like this. And so one of the things that I'm also passionately involved in right now is coaching boxing to the youth in Punta Ale. And it is sort of a ground up approach, from the bottom up approach, where first of all, it is for you to make any sort of prescription to a community or to try and inform a community of what you think they should be doing. I think you need to really understand the community. And for me, the easiest way to make a connection with my community was through sport and through my love of boxing. And so we joined forces with a local and with an international nonprofit, and we've basically raised enough money and so to create a boxing gym for kids. And I've helped them with some coaching. I've been boxing since I was about 16 years old and really love it. I was never a professional. I'm not a dangerous man. I'm a lover, not a fighter. But I do really think that boxing is an amazing thing. And I think that one of the key points of boxing that is so important is the fact that it teaches you discipline. And discipline, I believe, is a really important thing when it comes to things like conservation and when it comes to looking at your environment and making sure that you are good to your environment. Only a person with discipline would, for instance, pick up litter, or would, for instance, recycle properly, or would, for instance, do good practice and continue to do so. It doesn't help you just go for one day and be a conservationist one day, and then the next day you fall into your error of ways. And I think that discipline is a very important part of that. And so boxing is definitely, I think, something that can teach you that. Also, it's a lot of fun to watch. And if you know much about Mexico and their sport and international sports, boxing is a really big thing. And what we were able to do since then is, after being integrated into the community to the point where you've also built up their trust and you've shown them that you understand them, is when my wife Dasha, who works very hard side by side with me in this wonderful town of Punta Ale, she started a program called Buena Idea. And it just means good idea. And it's basically to inform the public that, because they are so reliant on tourism, that tourism specifically looks at the beauty of the environment. And we were able to basically take these people from the boxing gym and all these people that we had involved in the community and convince them of the idea that the pristineness or the beauty of their environment is of critical importance to them. It's what their whole community is based on, and it is basically how they all make their living. And that if people were to come to the beach or come to the town and see that the beach is full of litter and full of plastic, they would basically go home and say, look, don't go there. It's really dirty, or we didn't enjoy it. It was full of plastic and so forth. And I think that the locals have really bought into it. And now we have these regular beach cleanups. And so I think that if you also have a look at this, I also took a little bit of inspiration from the Soraya company in concerns of health, hygiene, and environment. And I specifically focused on health and the environment. I think that our efforts to basically give people a healthier life through boxing and exercise and the gym has also inspired us to also look after our environment. So I do thank you, Mr. Soraya, for when we met. I think that you taught me a lot of things, and it was wonderful to see Japan, and it was wonderful to see the Japanese culture. And it was inspiring to see how much discipline there was. And it was inspiring to see what could be achieved with a dream and with discipline and with perseverance. And I think it's part of the reason why I'm sitting here right now, was that wonderful influence that I got from Japan, from the Japanese people, their fly fishing guides, and the Soraya company, and especially you, Mr. Soraya. And that is the end of my talk.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you
Soraya,
very much,
you're welcome.
Francois. Imagine that you are here sitting next to me, but we can start dialogue. Maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 15? Okay,
Yes,
thank you very much
yes,
for
of
your
course.
great presentation. We appreciate it. As you said,
Thank you,
and
Mr.
also you mentioned about Japan. In
Yes.
Japanese, we have a Shintoism that is worship to the nature, as well as we don't like the dirt or something that clean that I think はい、汚れってなんていうか、we call it 汚れ, but something you have to clean off before you go to the God. That means the nature.
Yes.
That means we realize the plastic pollution to the nature may be cleaned, should be cleaned before we worship
Yes.
the sea. So this is, I think, I want to mention about Japanese kind of original spirits that we have, and you find it in ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Yes.
Sarai.
So you have very amazing experiences in fishing, fly fishing life. You don't mention because you don't have much time about Arctic salmon, but I know you fished the most important fish or person in the world in that lodge in fishing Arctic salmon. Who is Dasha?
Yes,
your wife.
the
Would you?
Atlantic salmon.
Yeah. So that was your most, let's say, most valuable fish that you had in your fishing life. Anyway, this is a joke. Yeah, please.
Well, the most valuable fish, I would say, I think that perhaps the Atlantic salmon was one of the most valuable fish. I think that it is a fish that commands a lot of respect. It grows up from very small, and it fights for its life ever since it grows up, and it grows up in a small river. And then eventually it goes out to sea and has to survive everything out at sea and so forth. And then miraculously, somehow, and I think people are still concerned, people still don't know how, this salmon will, after growing very big at sea, come and travel all the way back up a river and go to almost the exact same place where it was born to spawn. And I think that this fish is extremely valuable. And I also know that, of course, as a commercial entity, they're very, very valuable as well. So the Atlantic salmon, I would say, is perhaps inspiringly to me one of the more valuable fish that I have fished for.
No, is Dasha next to you now or not?
I'm afraid not. She's actually outside. She's looking after the dog so that he doesn't make too much noise during the...
I want to introduce her. That's why I put Arctic salmon, but she's not here. Okay, we have.
I can ask her to quickly say hello if you want to.
No, she's your most valuable fish that you fished in the past life.
You're right.
I wanted to say that. No, it's okay. Sorry to do my ununderstandable word. But anyway.
Well, Mr. Saraya, you can also say that the Atlantic salmon was the most valuable fish I ever caught, because it was when I was fishing for the Atlantic salmon that I met my wife, Dasha. So, yes, you could say that.
Sorry. But anyway, through your fishing life, but also we realized lots of plastic pollution, even in African small island, coming on floating, and I appreciate you make a discipline to your young people in Mexico by teaching boxing, then taught discipline, and they participate in the cleaning of the beaches. And also, in addition, you add some more business of ecotourism there, in addition to fly fishing ecotourism. So would you say this is one of the things that we can organize, a kind of cleaning beaches and protecting environment, especially the precious places where usually the precious fishes are precious places in the world. So would you say a little bit more your impression, but how we can make example of your cases in the world, because we find the lady in Gabon also forming a cleaning of the beaches through African water. So if you can mention a little bit more of your activities, it would be appreciated.
Yes, of course, Mr. Soraya. So we have established a community project here called COMC. And COMC is basically an entity on its own that is recognized by government as a sports training facility. And I teach some of the boxing, but there is also other sports involved, such as soccer, volleyball, and baseball. And all of those are very important sports in town. And what we were able to do is, we were able to also raise funds for basically renovating the community center, which would ultimately play as the central hub for all of our activities that we were organizing. But our vision is also bigger than that. We also are able to now be an education center. And we have done so much through the help of a professor of physical education, who happens to also be the principal of the middle school in town. And, what also happened in town was a lot of people were facing a problem. There isn't a high school in our town. And many of our guides and many of the people that work in town face a dilemma. And that is that as soon as their eldest child is old enough to go to high school, they have to leave town. But quite often, they have to leave town in order for that eldest child and the children after it to get a high school education, which we can all agree is very important. So they face this problem. The father, generally, who works in town, either as a fishing guide or so, can't leave because he has to work here. So they end up splitting up a whole family, and the family will have to go and live, for instance, in Merida or places where there are high schools. And it's a little bit of a sad feeling, I think. And, if you have 3 children, it means that for 10 or 11 or 12 years, you won't be living with your family and so forth. And I think that is quite a bit of toll. So what we've been able to do with COMC is we've been able to offer apprenticeships and diplomas to people so that if they decide not to go to high school, or if high school tends to be too challenging for a family to move to, we're able to offer these children from the ages of 13 and up a sort of a formal education beyond their middle school. And that generally comes in the form of things like sports coaching and so forth. And it's been a wonderful success in the sense that we've already trained up a young man that desperately wanted to go to high school, but his family couldn't afford it. And they couldn't afford to move and split up the family. And he is now, after running a course with us, gainfully employed in a nearby town. And so that is a tremendous success story for us. And that's part of our community and what we do for the community. Now, as I've mentioned before, what that's also done is it's given us credibility. And it's made a community like us and respect us and see that we have good ideas. And that, I must say, Mr. Soraya, has always been the challenge, I think. I think that quite often people from a Western or from a developed world will go into an undeveloped world, have a look at it and say, well, we know what this place needs. And they'll often try and do something like that. And it'll often be a failure because they fail to understand the needs of the community or what the real needs and concerns of the community was, or they are seen as outsiders by the community. And generally, over many, many years of projects such as those that have failed, I think that many communities have become weary of people coming in and trying to tell them what to do. In fact, in some cases, their culture won't allow them to just listen to a person that comes in from the outside and tells them what to do. So the COMC project has really gained or earned us a sort of a credibility in town. And that's why now we've been able to really get them and get people to group together and ask them to help us with the cleanups and so of the beach. But it doesn't stop there, Mr. Soraya. I know that you and I had a conversation a while ago, and I believe that your vision of not trying to just deal with the problem of plastic, as in to try and clean it up, but your vision of trying to make people less reliant on plastic and trying to coerce manufacturers and people such as that, and the big plastic manufacturers and consumers, to start reducing the availability of it and stuff, I believe is really the big vision out there. You know, it is a challenging thing for us to try and, convince, go to other countries and so forth and try and convince them, because what we have, our problem here is unique. It's not unique, but we receive the garbage of more than 50 countries on our shores. An interesting study was done, and it was found that garbage from as far as Malaysia ends up on this Yucatan Peninsula and our seas. And so, it's when people come here and they say, oh, look at how dirty, or look at how full of plastic all the beaches are, they often look at the Mexican people and say, well, it's your fault. Look at what you're doing to your beaches. And we're sitting here going, well, it's actually not us. Sure, there's a little bit of, rubbish or so in town that somebody's discarded, meaninglessly. But our major problem is what comes in from overseas. And so to date, we don't really have an answer for the bigger picture. But what we do know is that we need to sustain at least what we have here. And we would like to take it further, and we have ambitions to get proper plastic recycling going here, or perhaps even to just support, a lady here that does all of the cans recycling and stuff. Because as you know, Mrs. Soraya, it's very difficult to recycle, ocean-washed plastic because of how contaminated it is. And we also lack infrastructure, so we don't have sorting plants, and we don't have, we're not really able to pick up all the plastic and cart it out to our nearby town to get properly disposed of. So our next project is to look a little bit further and to try and find a solution for now getting rid of the plastic, and to perhaps see if there is a sort of a viable industry or a viable thing that we can do, And we've been speaking with a fair few, NGOs and so forth, and we've gained some support and some traction in the sense that we actually want to start employing people, gainful employment, in town. In order to give them a meaningful job. They understand how important it is and so forth, but and to give them an income from coming and doing this, and for cleaning up and making sure that the place is beautiful. And so so these are our ambitious plans, and but we believe that we can do it, and we believe that we have the community support to be able to do it.
Thank you, Francois, your vision. And I think through this Blue Ocean Pavilion, we are trying to make some solutions proposal for the islands of Indonesia or Philippines, where they have let their plastic onto the ocean through the rivers, and because they don't have the facility to proceed. Maybe we will need to make it a little bit on a commercial way. Maybe asking people or asking those manufacturers to join us, so that in the whole, we have the nice supply chain to help the garbages to clean out, creating some jobs on the locals, and which is just what you're doing in Mexico. And we share the visions, and we will try. Although it might be a small activities, but we can make network, and we can make solutions. So thank you very much. And in the end, because one of your golden carrier, as we had in this presentation, is your Goliath tiger fishing, because not many people did it in the world. Do you have anything, your commitment or future kind of commitment to those Chinko River or Congo, DRC Congo? Is it DRC or the other Congo, right? Congo.
So the Chinko is in the Central
Please
African
mention a little bit more about your Goliath again.
About the Goliath tigerfish, Mr. Soraya.
Or how to keep those fishes, or how to keep your activities there, or is there any idea in the future or not?
Mr. Soraya, I think that that program is always a very difficult one to continue. That the Chinco is a national park, and it has got a tremendous budget to sustain itself. I think that the Chinco requires something like $22 million a year just to protect that whole area. And our contribution, although significant, was a very small one. And when it comes to conservation and when it comes to national parks, I think that they have to be very careful to allow, the practice of things like fly fishing, even if it is catch and release. They have to be very careful about allowing that and so forth. And I believe that there are many, many challenges that a company such as African Parks face, when they have to make a decision as to what they will say yes or no to. I don't think it's impossible to go, but I think that for anybody that wants to go, they have to realize that it's quite a big challenge to go, and that only a very, very select few, in fact, Mrs. Raya, only about 4 people a year will be able to go to that place. And it is a very careful selection process. And it's not a normal fishing trip, if you know what I mean. It's not a trip where you say, oh, okay, well, how many fish am I going to catch? It's a trip where you say, well, okay, so how am I able to integrate into what is happening there right now, just in order to try to catch one, And so there is a mindset change that has to happen. So a project like that, Mr. Soraya, is always under threat. It's always under threat either of not enough funding, or it's always under threat of the governing body taking a different direction. And but what you are able to do is you're able to, if somebody wanted to go, you would put together a proposal to the governing body and say, here's our proposal, we would like to go, and so forth. And, if it's a good proposal, you might be given the chance to go and see it.
No, just let it leave as nature, and not many people touches it, but you are one of the rare person who touched it, and got the great Goliath tiger on your hands and release it again. So congratulations of your experience, and I appreciate that you share it with us.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rai. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So I think some of our Japanese guests will visit your Parameta Club in the future, or maybe you would visit us again in Japan, or some of the things that we keep in touch to keep the environment clean and sustainable as it has been before. Don't make it change, although there's lots of risks, climate change or plastic pollution or some other community destroy, community risks and so on. But we will keep in touch and make some, at least, challenges to the better future in the world. So thank you very much for joining us today. And we appreciate your presentation from Mexico. And please give our best regards to your wife, Dasha. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Soraya, and best to everybody there, best to everybody in Japan and Blue Ocean Dome and in the Soraya Company. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Francois, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.